I'm Jake Hyan. I'm the managing partner of Wellworthy Media. We're a media platform that covers the latest and greatest in health, wellness, and fitness. To my left, we have Ingrid Millman-Cordy. She is the CMO of Higher Dose, and John Sullivan, the CMO of Whoop. Before we get into our conversation, I'm just going to let them both kind of go a little bit deeper into their background and what they do.
Hi, everyone. I'm super, super happy to be here. I will try to keep my energy up while I'm also conserving energy from being cold. I'm Ingrid. I have been on actually the Higher Dose journey since the very beginning alongside the two co-founders, Lauren and Katie, through an advisory role, and I, in the meantime, was working full-time for companies like the Estee Lauder companies, John Varvatos, MAC Cosmetics, and working in fashion and beauty for about the first decade of my career. And then I went into health and wellness through CPG at Nuun Hydration. Shout out, anybody knows the good old Nuun tablet. I was part of the team that led us to the Nestle Health Science acquisition in 2020. Funny, like, mommy story from me is I actually took the call to tell the team that we were acquired and sort of being the celebratory place while I was in the hospital bed after giving birth to my first son. And my husband took a picture of me on a Zoom call in the bed and was like, this is the most Ingrid picture that has ever existed. But it was really fun. It was a great experience. And now I've been full-time at Higher Dose for about a year and really, really love it there. So here I am.
Great to see you, Ingrid. Thanks, Jake. It's funny, we discovered that we were probably on calls together back in the late 2000 teens, which is, I'm obviously dating myself now, but so John Sullivan, the Chief Marketing Officer at Whoop. I've been there, it'll be 9 years in the spring. And I remember, like it was yesterday, I logged in on my first day. We were on Shopify at the time, and I had been advised by some friends, like, this looks cool, you should do this, and others be like, do you read the news? Jawbone and Basis had gone out of business, like Apple Watch was on the market at that point. This company doesn't stand a chance type thing. And I logged into Shopify, and we sold 8 Whoop straps that day. And I was like, I really should have asked more questions before I accepted this position. But it's been an incredible ride ever since. A lot of moving and shaking along the way, a lot of adapting what we do. But to the point now where the marketing team has got a really, really broad charter at Whoop. We're responsible for most of, I'd say, the top line bookings as a function of demand creation, demand capture, and lifecycle management. We also run the brand creative team out of the marketing organization, lifecycle communications, sports and talent partnerships, which are a big piece of our puzzle, PR and comms, if you name it, we probably do it in the marketing department at Whoop. But it's a lot of fun. It's a fun place to market.
Right on. Well, thank you both. And so, all right. So, as Bill introed, so today we're going to talk about kind of the power of routine, but more specifically how brands and products can actually become integrated into people's actual lives and how they become part of your everyday or weekly routine. Not something that someone's just using once or posting about once, but actually getting integrated into their lives. So both of you work at companies and are in roles where you're trying to get users to have repeat behavior, build trust, and build cultural relevancy. So I want to dive into kind of like what makes a product stick, what doesn't make a product stick, and lean into kind of your experiences and what you've learned over the years. So my first question for you both is kind of the foundation of it. So why is routine important? And when you're designing products, what makes a product actually stick in someone's routine?
I'll go first. Okay, I'll give it a shot. So what makes routine important in a product? It's interesting. I mean, so Whoop, for years we tried to figure out what exactly we wanted to say about how we market it, right? It's like recovery, strain, sleep, health, stress, and it just keeps building. And ultimately, the thing that keeps rising to the top is it's really about behavior change. And behavior change, I'm going to use a cheesy term, but it's like behavior stacking. And for years, I used to listen to, like, we have ambassadors like Michael Phelps talk about marginal improvements and 1% gains. And I was like, this doesn't resonate. Like, I definitely have like 80% gains ahead of me if I would just apply myself. But I think the point of it is that you need to start someplace. And the first step, like somebody asked me the other day, like if I could do one thing for my wellness routine, what would it be? I was like, buy a blood pressure cuff. And they're like, why a blood pressure cuff? I was like, because it's so simple. You take agency over your behavior and you start a practice. Where Whoop gets really interesting, and I think it's just a metaphor for behavior change at large, is what you can measure, you can then manage. So in the earliest days of Whoop, I remember reading this data science case study that came from the performance team, and it was actually, like the Hurt Locker guys and women, the men and women who like do the bomb squad, that movie Hurt Locker. We did a test control experiment with the DoD, the Defensive Devices Ordnance. Yeah, thank you, the Ordnance Division. And all we did was put Whoop on 50 of the people on the team, and exposed half of them to their data and half not. Right, the people who were exposed to their data with no coaching whatsoever, they improved on every measurable dimension, every KPI in the Whoop ecosystem, and every measurable definition of performance within their own DoD ordinances and the things that they had to provide. So if you can expose someone to it, if you can measure it, then you can manage it. But Whoop has also been really interesting because it's like a modality validator or dispeller. And so we work with a lot of partners, in the nutrition space and so forth, and the recovery space, to say what is the impact that's had on the actual members. So there's a modality, there's a lifestyle, there's a decision. What is the impact that it's having empirically on one's life? And then from there, we really try to inspire, right? So it's like the benefit of that. How do you feel? What did it do for you? But it all starts with that first step. And from there, there's a whole world of inspiration and organization that you can apply to keep it going.
Really quick before we get to your answer. So on the data exposure topic that you kind of mentioned, because one of the battles I think that Whoop has is, okay, we're going to present you all this data and tell you how your recovery is, how your sleep is, all of this. So how do you manage that gap of providing the data and insights and actually getting someone to take action and build routines around the insights?
It's a great question given that we're talking about product, because we have a section in the app that we refer to as impacts, and you can journal. I think Whoop is legitimately one of the largest by adoption journaling apps in the world, and you can put in dozens and dozens of different behaviors and choices. You can also now implement them through Apple Health Kit or Google Health Connect, whatever the case may be, and gamification is a cheesy way of looking at it, but it's really like input, output, and we can show you when you choose not to eat late, or when you choose to avoid that alcoholic drink, or when you keep your strain within target. These are the impacts that it has across the different dimensions of health and wellness. And so it's a bit of a cheat code for Whoop insofar as we can demonstrate the impact that it has. But I like on the marketing side, which then we'll talk about later, is what is the benefit of that impact? Like, you did it. What did it do for your longevity, your health span, and how did it make you feel?
Right. Thank you.
All right. So with higher dose, I think the adage is like, what is the best workout for you? It's like, well, the best workout for you is actually just going to be the one that you actually do, right? So it's like, if you enjoy running, go running. If you hate running, go lift weights, or, whatever you end up wanting to actually do and becomes a regular part of your life and your routine is what is ultimately going to be the healthiest for you. We use that same approach with at-home wellness devices. So where you can go, and we actually started in New York City as an infrared sauna spa. You can come visit us, and you can go and do the experience, and you can book the appointment, and you can get on the subway and go into the place and take your session, and that's a beautiful experience. And where we started. But what ended up happening was, Bella Hadid is like posting herself in our sauna, and people in Chicago and Ohio and Memphis are, getting into our DMs being like, come to my city, come to my city. And so while we were trying to figure out an expansion for the spas, we realized, hey, we actually can create this at home with the infrared sauna blanket, which was our first innovation that we brought to the D2C environment outside of our spas, and that took off. And then what ended up happening is we had both types of those businesses, and then, whoop, I would just leave it down. It's going to attack you. Totally. Or if we have sandbags. Anyway. Everyone being safe. Okay. So anyway, what happened was we had both businesses. COVID happened, and all of our spas shut down. We were in like 20 different Equinoxes in New York City, and we had our own owned and operated places. And so the sauna blanket business took off because wellness had to happen at home at that point. And then I think what ended up happening was all of our product development from there on was, how do we take this thing that you would have to like leave your home, go buy a session, go buy a bunch of expensive packages, and actually no, like you can do PEMF therapy, red light therapy, infrared sauna, now microcurrent therapy at home by yourself whenever you want to, right? So just incorporating the routine into your life is literally the design of our products. So I think that's been a really big unlock. And then in terms of what you were saying, like the power of habit stacking, like who hasn't read Atomic Habits and all of that, I think there's so much to that, which is just, okay, well, if I wake up and before I go down to have my coffee, I know that I'm a better person if I spend 10 minutes to meditate, right? I know that about myself. I'm going to put on my red light mask and meditate, and I'm going to work on my collagen and my fine lines while also working on my mentality. And that just becomes this like part of my life. Whereas, if I had to go and get a red light add-on to a facial that I should be doing quarterly and probably end up doing biannually, it just changes the entire impact of the product. So that's just how our products have been designed, to take high grade spa quality services and just incorporate them into your everyday life.
And so you kind of talk a little bit too about the product development. And while Whoop and Higher Dose are different companies, there's kind of that same, whenever you launch a new feature, whether it's Advanced Labs or Higher Dose just released the red light shower filter. When you're releasing these new products, features, or SKUs, what are kind of the early signals that you're looking at from the consumer in terms of, are they actually adopting this as a routine and implementing it into their lives, or are they still just kind of testing it right now to really see that it's stuck with the person?
In our world, we're monitoring the app data constantly, obviously at an aggregated, anonymized level. But we've created effectively an entire life cycle of the relationship that you would expect through the lens of the feature, from first contact from an LCM or lifecycle marketing point of view, all the way back to win back and all of the data points in between. We're building a lot of cohorts from a segmentation basis to help understand how people are trending and how to give them nudges. With all that being said, and that's all the product side, again, as the marketing guy, social listening and the amount of shareability of content ends up being the thing that is probably the single strongest signal to whether or not we hit a nerve. Now, obviously, we would have tested an alpha and beta to see if the engagement is where we would want it. We have historical thresholds to pursue, but our health span feature, for example, where we give Whoop Age and Pace of Aging, within a week, it became the most shared screen grab of all of the 100 bajillion screens we have within Whoop. So on the marketing side, the social listening and the shareability doesn't necessarily mean that it's working as a persistent habit at the individual level, but the overall stickiness as a leading indicator tends to come out that way first.
So our product has an interesting adoption curve. So we have always been, we started doing infrared and infrared sauna a decade ago, right? And I think only just in the past 3 years has it become much more mainstream. There's so many more locations where you can do it. Other competitors have come out with similar sort of blanket products, not as good as ours, but they're out there, right? But we've been at it for a long time. We're on V4 of our sauna blanket, and people are just copying it off the shelf. So we have always had these early adapter, biohackers, frankly, the people that know about these modalities a decade before the mainstream does. And then we also now have people who are understanding red light, because it's a much more easier modality to understand and purchase. So then you have people who are not really at all wellness or biohackers, or people who spend any meaningful amount of time thinking about wellness as their personality or their circles or the things that they like to learn about and read about, and they're just more mainstream, oh, I heard this is really good for my skin, and so they'll just buy a red light mask, and that'll be their entry point into the brand. So we have all of these various on ramps. It's the same thing with our PEMF mats, right? So PEMF mats, athletes, people who take their recovery just as seriously as they take their like strength routines, understand the power of cellular recovery, of red light therapy, of PEMF and all that. So they've known that modality. But now I think people like moms are catching on to how calming the PEMF mat can be, and like you put your kids to bed, and I'll lay down on my PEMF mat, and my husband's like, oh, we're putting mommy on the charger now, and that's what it feels like. But it's such a different application than like what we've been using in like training facilities at the MLB, and so I think that thinking about adoption and where people are at in their, like, we call them like high information, low information buyers, and then we have different personas, right? So there's like the optimizer persona, which is probably the people who are wearing Whoops and Oura Rings and Superhumans and all the trackers and things like that, and they just like optimization, data tracking, wellness is part of their lifestyles and their identities, and that's like how they create their friendship circles and things like that.
Yeah.
But then we also have like the regulator, which is on the total opposite end of the personas, who's like dealing with burnout, dealing with maybe like a mold detox or Lyme disease or autoimmune things that they're just trying to get back to baseline that our products help them for. So in our marketing, in our messaging, we have to be really thoughtful about how we're framing up these modalities, because in one context I'm talking to a you, right, who like understands the space, and you who understands the space, like people, probably everyone in this room. But then there's also the people who are like so overwhelmed, so confused by the language in the space, and just need guidance. And so I think it's our position as the educators, the market makers of the space, to invite those people into the brand, in an empathetic and vulnerable way.
Yeah. So the last question I have on routine, more as like a product, and this is kind of a selfish question. So and we were talking before, I've recently started wearing Whoop again, and I initially was wearing it probably 3 years ago. Now, the reason I stopped wearing it was because of kind of this overload of data, and I felt like it was controlling the way that I lived sometimes, where like maybe I woke up and I felt great, but then I looked at my recovery and it was poor, so then it was like, okay, this app and this device is telling me I should have a poor day now. So
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
So sorry.
You ruined his day, Sully.
But I'm back. I'm back now. But the reason I say that is, both of you, your products are trying to become routines in people's lives. And the way I kind of describe what I just went through was like a healthy lifestyle routine versus a routine that kind of restricts your lifestyle. So how do you balance with, whether it's Whoop or whether it's the PEMF mat, and someone feeling like, oh, I have to lay on this before I go to bed or else I'm not going to get a good night's sleep or something like that? How do you balance building a healthy routine for someone versus making it feel like you're restricting their lifestyle?
So for us, it's a rare thing in the biohacking space to be female-oriented and female-led. And given that our founders are female and the majority of the team is female, we lean a lot into intuition. We all wear the trackers, and we all, want to know what is going on with us. But we also really focus on like connecting with how you're actually feeling. Like I might wake up and my Oura Ring score might be terrible, right? And I might wake up and be like, actually, I feel pretty good. Like I'm gonna go for that run, or I'm gonna like. We do encourage people probably more and more to check in with themselves and truly understand how they're feeling within. So that would be my recommendation of how all of our products work together and how you're supposed to be made to feel afterward. We love tracking. In fact, we want to add more tracking. So I'm not at all against tracking into our products, but I do think that you can't have one without the other.
This is a very popular question. Something in the air or the water lately, making it especially so. I think the best advice I can give around data anxiety, and by the way, there's a blinding feature within the app, and this came from our early days in professional athletics, where you can black out your recovery score in the morning. And it came from teams being like, or coaches specifically being like, whatever they wake up with, they wake up with, and I can't have it. Yeah, I can't have it in their head. And so that feature does exist out there. But the way that I try to look at it is the data is an input to your lifestyle. It's not a report card for your lifestyle. So like you wake up in the morning and you see that green, all right, like carry on, and then subject to whether or not that actually represents what you're capable of that day, listen as you go. And similarly, if you're coming in with that red score, approach with caution, right? It's almost like a weather forecast for your body where it's like, well, it's just because it's cold and wet outside doesn't mean you're not going to go out and do your thing. It's just you're going to prepare for it a little bit differently. I really do believe that in COVID changed this for, I think, the public psyche at large. Like the idea of continuous monitoring in 2019 was kind of weird. Like it was a hard thing to market. It sounded kind of Big Brother. And then all of a sudden COVID, where you can detect onset of illness before you're even popping with an antigen test, it's just like, oh shit, I should really be paying attention. And now when it comes to like blood work, where, you know, I thought for my entire life that my lifestyle was outrunning my genetics, and then I did our first advanced labs feature on the alpha, and my ApoB was 5x the outer limit of what a doctor would find healthy. And I was like, how's that even possible? Totally genetic, not behavior modifiable. If I didn't know, I wouldn't have been able to do anything about it. And that's one of those things where you need to. So I believe fundamentally that like data is information, it's power, it's a great way for you to adapt. But as it relates to your navigation of the day-to-day, it's not a judgment, it's not a report card, it's an input to how you go about your human self.
Right. A little bit about reflection and recognizing. It's like 2 days ago I was in the green. Yesterday, or this morning when I woke up, 55%, and I can recognize it's because I dug into the gummy bears that were at the Fairmont like, next to my room. Probably shouldn't be having that at like 9 p.m., but I understand that's probably why my recovery was poor.
More than likely.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to transition a little bit. We've been talking a lot about routine more as like product design, but both of you are CMOs. So I want to talk about more routine as marketing. And because it's your jobs both as CMOs to kind of set the expectation of this is our product, this is kind of how you're going to build it into your life, and this is the benefit that you're going to get from it. And if when you're selling these products, a user doesn't get that payoff, in this day and age, if they don't get that payoff relatively quickly, they're going to churn. So as CMOs, how do you kind of set that expectation and also choose, like, what is the expectation we want to set for the user?
I can go first. So we have to narrow it down to the benefit first, right? So like if we can prove out that we can improve one thing in your life first, then we should do that, and then we can build on from there. Given the fact that we are a wellness tech company, we don't have a natural product that's like repeat purchase, right? So we basically have to like go out and earn new business as well as re-earn our old customers through new technology investments. So the way that we've figured out to make that work for us and for the customer and ultimately add real value into their lives is to narrow down what their focus is. Because wellness is like this big, broad, complicated thing. So it's like, are you looking for detox? Are you looking for better sleep? Are you looking for stress management? Are you looking for hair and skin quality improvement? So like, let's start with that one manageable thing, market to that, earn their trust, and then come back and explain to them actually this is built into a ritual. So if you were to add a PEMF mat in with your red light mask or your red light mat, then you're going to actually habit stack. You're going to make more use out of that 10, 15, 20 minutes a day that you're using. And then you're going to actually now improve your stress, which actually improves everything. Your sleep. If you improve your sleep, it's going to improve everything else. So we kind of start with the one category, and then typically our customers are tracking their sleep scores and things like that. And so they wake up and they're like, oh my God, I did PEMF for 10 minutes before I went to bed and my sleep score went up by like 5 points. Like, it's crazy. And so it's really meaningful difference. And that's why, you know, a brand like ours, we end up having like a 30% return rate because they're buying the other piece of equipment because they understand that we put so much care, thought, and consideration into our product development, and then we market that as a real promise. But I would say the main thing is like we start small, start very specific, and then we explain to them how the lifestyle builds from there.
Yeah, a lot of that resonates for me as well. I mentioned earlier that in the earliest days of Whoop, it was, I remember looking at Aura and it was like the sleep ring, and we were looking at campaigns. It was like the sleep band. And then we were really righteous about, no, it's recovery, straight and sleep, and they're all in equal parts, and the harmony is everything. And I think that set us behind in the early days for how best to communicate the value proposition of the brand. And in retrospect, I think simplicity is really, really, really important. So now we talk about it as providing the insights that change behaviors that help you live better for longer. And living better for longer, closer to your human potential, like that's the thing that's been around since before I was at Whoop a million years ago. And then in that simplicity, taking multiple ways of coming at the member, the consumer, would-be consumer, through multiple angles, so they see a reflection of themselves in that. So we represent a lot of different lifestyles. Like, yeah, we might work with Patrick Mahomes and Cristiano Ronaldo or whatever, but like performers, ambitious people of all stripes, parents, professionals, arts, music, media, entertainment, who are all here this weekend. We try to tell more stories that just hold the mirror of what it looks like to provide that simple solution, help you live a little closer to potential for longer relative to what that person sees in themselves. From there, education is really important, because like a lot of what we do is really heady stuff, and so we pump a lot of time into education across all of our owned media channels, and they all have we're prolific publishers, and they all have totally different purposes, whether you're on X or you're on our blog or you're listening to our podcast. So meeting people where they are to give them the feedback loop that whatever they signed up for, they think they might be getting. And then again, like at the end of it all, again, as a marketer, I think in terms of brand and inspiration. So it's like, I talk a lot about performance as health ambitiously applied. And so now that you've stacked these habits and you've got some wins under your belt, what do you want to do with it next? It doesn't have to be to run a sub 3-hour marathon or complete an ultra. It could be to like feel fresh for 6 days in a row and have a green streak. But I think giving people that what's next inspiration and creativity they might not have is really important.
I love that, actually. And I'll add to that is just that we also, as a brand, the way that we demonstrate who we are is a projection of what that lifestyle looks like, right? So like our founders are, busy moms and have multiple kids, but also run this company and look beautiful and have, so yeah, I totally agree. I think setting the aspirational vision of what this person is buying into is mega important.
Is there ever a time when that projection that you've wanted to put out there for like, this is what our product, this is who it's for, this is what you're going to get from it, you were sitting in the room with your team and you've thought, this is perfect, this is going to hit, and then you actually put it out into the world and it did not go as expected, and kind of how you had to pivot from there?
Yes.
Yes.
Let's dive into that.
I love this question because this was in the pre-read materials, and I was like, oh, I know the answer very clearly. We produced a campaign 3 years ago that I was the most proud of any campaign I've ever created in my life, and it was The Best Obsess, and it sounded good, and like we had Alex Honnold and Michael Phelps, and in that moment, it learned not that something might not work, but that it might work too well. And the idea that Whoop was only for Apex performers became like shit on a shoe. And I had to like every press outreach, everything we had to do would be like, yeah, but for athletes, or like, yeah, but for like super duper performers. Like, no, it just sounded good and it was sexy and we had a great soundtrack. Like, it's just a great campaign. And it just stuck too much. It's funny, as marketers, you run around repeating the same thing over and over again, trying to get it to stick. And then every once in a while, it sticks
careful
so
what you wish
much. Yeah,
for.
careful what you wish for. And it just like, this is another lesson. It's, as a marketer, as a brand person, as a founder, you can't run out and be like, what do I want to say? You have to meet people with what they're hearing. And people heard, oh, wow, this is like some alpha shit. Like, this is for really serious people. And all we meant was like, be passionate. And it just way oversteered in a way that was abundantly clear afterwards.
I think, are we getting the...
I think we're getting cut off.
We're getting cut off.
Bill, are we out of time over there?
One question.
Okay, we'll finish it off with the rapid fire questions that I have.
I'm sorry.
So I'm going to ask you, there's 4 or 5 of these, and you each just get one answer quickly. One wellness habit that you never skip.
Red light.
Walking my dog in the woods.
Okay. one wellness behavior that people should stop doing.
Too much cardio.
Oh,
Okay, I love that one. For females specifically, cold plunge.
I hate cold
I said it.
That's because you're cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not right now. Certain parts of your cycle you can cold plunge, but most of the time you should not be cold plunging.
One marketing myth that founders should ignore or just stop doing.
Don't do everything.
Oh God, that's what I was gonna say. No, I swear to God, because absolutely. More is more is not true.
Yeah.
Okay, and then lastly, strip away everything on the brand deck and the buzzwords that you hear and all the category noise. What is the one thing that you believe wellness brands in 2026 need to do in order to be successful?
Prove you solve a problem, very incisively, very specifically.
Add value to your consumer's life.
Wonderful. We'll give it up for Ingrid and John. Thank you all for listening.
So fun.
Let's go!